the East, they'll betray you. On a serious point, that was, I think, the third time the same people were endorsing the president.
Right.
Even at least at the last Inquara, there was also another endorsement. And also where all these things have been happening, there have been these repeated endorsements.
But much as it is the fifth, I mean, it only shows affirmation that we haven't changed our mind.
I wouldn't get the comfort in getting repeated affirmations if I'm going to gain ground in what I'm doing. I mean, you can't have the same people, affirming you everywhere you go. You go to northwestern province, you find the same people coming from eastern province coming to affirm you. You go to southern province, you carry the same people and they go and affirm you from there. That shouldn't give you any sense of comfort. In fact, for me, it is an exhibition of a troubled leadership. When you get to a place where the same people have to endorse you everywhere they find you, is a troubled leadership. There was a story about RB that, you see, everywhere he went, in one time even asked, he goes to Ndola in the airport, the same MPs are lining up. He shows up in Livingston at the airport, the same MPs are lining up, endorsing him repeatedly. And I think he read where it was going. At the end of the day, his performance was very dismal against Michael Sata. So look, for me, we have seen this, we've watched this movie before, we have seen it before. But I am not going to concern myself very much with the endorsement that took place in Eastern Province. I think I said it is an record player. He can repeat record and if you get his record LP, this repeated endorsement, if I was in HH's team, just remember, yes, it is scratched, just take it and throw it away. So let's talk about the endorsement allegedly by the councillors. Yes. I feel very, very concerned, quite frankly. I feel very, very concerned about the way the UPND is beginning to treat the citizens of the nation and to treat especially people that have got responsibilities that are constitutionally defined in the nation. Okay, I wouldn't have any problem with any councillor endorsing President HH, but I have a problem with the design that the UPND has put in place to create an impression that the Republican President is being endorsed by various stakeholders in the nation. If you followed the issue of the councillors, the first thing you saw was some kind of circular that said, please note that, I think it was addressed to all the council secretaries, or town clerks rather, that please allow the councillors to travel to Lusaka. There's a very important assignment that they're coming to do in Lusaka. That assignment was not mentioned. Nobody knew why they were being called to come to Lusaka. Okay. This event actually didn't take place on the date it was originally intended to have taken place. It was, for reasons that nobody understood, it was postponed to another day. Okay. And then these councillors came to Lusaka. They had absolutely no idea why they were coming to Lusaka. Okay. The only thing that happened is from what the events unraveled, they arrived in Lusaka and they were given t-shirts written CDF and they were told, go and sit here, and they were actually told what to do. When the president comes up, you stand up, you do this. They had absolutely no idea why they were coming to Lusaka. And that discussion, centered on various issues that are, a chronicle of irrelevancies. What you saw, was a president coming in there, and the discussion started. And what did you hear? The councillors want good terms of service or conditions of service. Every councillor that stood to speak, they were not talking about anything about policy. They're not talking about anything about what government should do. They're not talking about what the people who voted for them sent them to Lusaka to come and engage the president on. They immediately started talking about conditions of service. Now, make no mistake. I'm one of those who believe that our councillors are not properly taken care of when it comes to conditions of service. In fact, I supported various motions in this parliament to try and improve the terms and conditions of services of the councillors. The UPND MPs in parliament never argued in support of that motion, okay? Because of course they had not been given instructions to do it. In fact, there was talk that yes, this thing is being considered, but you can't bring it as a motion. And they shot all the motions down. I supported that motion. Even when I'm sitting with my councillors in Kasama, I always argue that their conditions are not very good. But the style of bringing them to Lusaka without giving them any agenda of discussions, the style of engaging between the councillors directly with the president to discuss the conditions of service is unprecedented. You can never do such a thing in a country that is run by laws, in a country that has got a constitutional order. You can't do it that way. I was telling somebody yesterday that President Hakainde Hichilema has revised the style of governing the country that runs contrary to every norm that is known on how to run a country. The president has got a way in which he communicates matters of importance in terms of governance. The most important power the president has is to commission a discussion. If the president was thinking that the councillors' terms and conditions of service are not appropriate, they need to be revised and looked at. And if it was going to come out of State House, first he was going to have received stakeholder consultations, and secondly he was going to open a commission of inquiry, because even you, Zach, and me have to participate on how we would like to start looking after the terms and conditions of our councillors. That is the responsibility of civic bodies and also citizens. But these guys came with no agenda. They were sat in a podium and they started engaging the president. And somehow, the president began to say to them, oh yeah, I'm told that, you people your conditions are not very good. We would like to improve your conditions of service. Where is his power under the Constitution? Where is his power under the laws? Where is his power under the Inquiries Act if he wants to engage the public about the conditions of service of the councillors? But look, this is a president who believes in giving what people call poison pills. Okay? You come and bring a councillor whose plight is not very well. You bring a councillor to Lusaka and sit him down in a podium and begin to suggest to him that, look, I'm the president. I know your conditions are not all right. I'll look after you very well and everything. And somewhere you position one selected individual to come and now exclaim that the councillors have endorsed the president. Most of the chaps, sorry, I'm not going to call my councillors chaps, but most of the councillors who are sitting there were taken with a rude shock what transpired. Somewhere, they came for a meeting that didn't have an agenda of endorsement, and they hear one individual with whom they didn't even canvass stand up and say, oh, we're endorsing the president for 2026. Now, these are acts of desperation by the executive. It has now become very, very clear that how they've managed this country has created more problems than solved any. So this is like people that are swimming and they're about to drown, and they see any reed that looks, available for them to hold on to, they hold on to. And then they dramatize, or they set up some sort of endorsement. And it is said, most of the councillors who came from there were disillusioned. I had dinner with my councillors from Kasama. They were very confused. And I told them, go to the public and let the public know. But we are very, very angry that we could be brought in a place like that, paraded, and without being told anything. And in any case, there was not even discussion ultimately on what the conditions of service for the councillors are going to be, although it was just a talk show, and then an endorsement takes place. You heard some of the councillors have actually come openly in public, and they have said, we were not participating in that. We did not come to endorse the president. They said, and I agree with them, they cannot stop anybody, any one of the councillors in individual capacity to choose who to endorse. Okay. And some of them who even came out of there came and endorsed Brian Mundubile, saying, look, so far as we're concerned, we have seen that an alternative leadership has started emerging, and we have come here now to tell you the truth that we didn't endorse the president in that Mungweshi conference meeting. We have now come to endorse Brian Mundubile, who we know is going to be the next Republican president. So this endorsement, sir, Zambians should not worry about it. Okay. Firstly, it was forced on the throats of the councillors, and secondly, it did not, benefit from the collective reasoning of the councillors. It was just individual people. But we knew when this thing was set up, we knew this was going to happen. But I must say this, Zach, that it is very, very unfortunate, for the president to switch the way in which we govern this nation. And I feel sorry for the president. And let me tell you this, Jack, just at the beginning, I think if I was sitting in the inside of the power, power seat where President Hakainde Hichilema is sitting right now, I would recommend that he fires all his advisors. Because this is beginning to become embarrassing for the president. You saw what happened in Kitwe, when it was suggested that students were coming, this new issue of Sot Sana, within hours of Sot Sana, the real story came unraveled to the public, that these kids were picked up, lined up, and brought there and told stories. They were going to be paid. The whole principle of Notek had to come and acknowledge it. Just we paid these kids to go and purportedly endorse the president. And when it looked like they're not going to be paid, they started rioting. This is a wrong time for people to be doing things that have got these immediate backlashes on the president. If I was the advisor of the president myself, I'd have told the president, sir, let's go for a 2 weeks retreat. Let's go and look at how we reorganize how we're going to present ourselves to the public. This is taking away value from what the president would like to achieve in getting these endorsements, because everything that is happening is backfiring within moments after it happens. This is wrong for the president.
Now, you, Honorable George Sanga, Member of Parliament for Lukashya constituency, are a very key person in the BM8 project.
That's right.
You are one of the architects of the Brian Mundubile project.
Yes.
And you went up to a big test.
That's right.
Kasama mayoral election was a big test for you because also you were the campaign chairperson.
That's right.
Right? And you were beaten pants down right at your backyard.
Yes.
What does that mean for you?
Let me make this very, very clear. The Kasama mayoral election was not lost by the FDD. The Kasama mayoral election was rigged by the UPND. When they saw how Zambians or people in Kasama stood up, to everything that they brought into Kasama and decided they were going to vote against the UPND. That election was rigged. I can tell you for a fact.
How so?
Of course it was rigged. To start with, the UPND did not bring any campaign message to those people of Kasama. You know what they did? They came and set up, eating kiosks within the areas in Kasama, especially in Lukashya constituency, because Kasama is divided into two constituencies. Yes. Kasama Central is a peri-urban constituency. Lukashya constituency, I'm privileged to be member of parliament of, is basically a rural constituency. So what they did, they went and set up kiosks within those areas and started feeding people from day one. And these are people that, believe it or not, firstly, they are farmers who you didn't give fertilizer. So they're angry with you. These are people who are farmers who you didn't pay when they brought maize to your sheds. They're angry with you. Then you show up in Kasama and set up kiosks to begin feeding them. Okay? And you feed them for the period of the campaign. When your friends are sending messages of campaign, you are actually feeding them. On the day of election, in fact, the night before the day of election, somebody very high ranking in the system came and had a meeting with me and told me exactly how they were going to rig the election. They paid presiding officers and they picked, selected the polling stations and made sure that in there, that's where we're going to use. And here's the routine that they used. Okay. The first thing they did when they opened up those polling stations, in these selected polling stations, the polling agents for the FDD were not allowed to go in the polling station. Exactly what I was told was going to happen the night before. They were not allowed to go in the polling station, allegedly because the forms that they came with, that the accreditation forms had been signed off, by somebody who wasn't qualified. Now, the only person who's allowed to sign off those accreditation form is the headmaster, and most of them were done. The accreditation was signed in the same way we do them all the time. But to create the impression that there was something wrong, they kept our agents away from there, like I was told it was going to happen. And that's the time they stuffed the ballot papers. I started engaging everybody as campaign manager. All the polling stations where there was a problem, most of them, rather not all of them, others were not picking phones because these are areas, Zach, which are about 150 kilometers from where I was. So you make a phone call and say, why are agents not being allowed to go into the polling? No, they gave all manner of excuses. One guy, I engaged him on the phone and he was extremely rude. And he told me, Mr. Chisanga, I have been given instructions. Your agent will not come in here unless I'm given instructions by somebody, the district electoral officer, who's a town clerk in Kasama, to do this because I've seen the form. It's not properly done. So I told him, who assigned the form? He says it's the headmaster. We are told it's supposed to be signed by a commissioner for oaths. I told him that's not the position. The regulations are very clear. We've been doing elections from 2001, some of us. That form is, no, these are instructions I've given. You will not be allowed. So in all these selected polling stations, our agents were not allowed to go in until 2 hours down the line. In that 2 hours, I'd spoken to a number of people in Kasama. All of them were not, accommodating. I spoke to Mr. Kasaro in Lusaka. I told him, I have a problem here. Here's what I'm being told. No, let me find out what is going to happen. After 2 hours, the agent started calling me saying, they have allowed us to go in. They've allowed us to go in. Now, in that 2 hours, we lost an opportunity to see whether these elections are going to be, these ballot papers are going to be staffed or not. Whether they were staffed or not is something we can't establish because our polling agents were not allowed to go in that area. Okay, but this is information that we had been given from a credible source the night before. And we were not just able to make sure we can get against that because this is a distance. Phone calls were not working, etc., etc. That's point number one. Point number two, I was told the UPND was going to station people within 50 meters from the polling stations. And they were going to start giving people 100 kwacha for you to go and vote, 100 kwacha when it comes from voting. That is a fight I took into the areas that I was able to access. I went there with people that accompanied me. Believe it or not, the amount of violence to which we were treated is unprecedented. I was almost killed in that election, Zach, because I went to 5 polling stations and I retrieved material that they were using to basically, what they had done, they had come around 5 days before the elections, established their own registers, taken voters' cards and NRCs from people that didn't want to access polling stations. If they knew that you, Zach, are elect, you are going to vote for a person you have chosen, and they don't want you to go to a polling station, they would grab your NRC, grab your voter's card, keep it away. On that day, you won't access the polling stations. I was being called by people, please to apapa, to vote. That's one set of people. The second set of people, they had a list with your NRC and the voter's card number. Okay, and they were keeping a voter's card. You show up, they give you an NRC, give you a voter's card and 100 kwacha. Go and vote. And somebody goes and votes and comes back. I went and grabbed from 4 polling stations. I went and grabbed those registers because I had security. You know what they did? One of them took a clip of us and sent it to their so-called security wing. And they came for us. They were armed with guns. They were armed with machetes. They were armed with all sorts of weapons, and they followed us. I was saved because I had security. We actually had enlisted somebody to provide security because we knew what was going to happen. If the guys who were giving me security were not trained security officers, you would have been talking a different story today. I was chased a distance of about 85 kilometers because they wanted to come and grab the papers that I had. They gave me that chase, and they told me, when I started asking for security, for protection, I called the police in Kasama. I told them, please help us. These guys are after us. They're about to kill us. And this is what actually happened to us in Kawambwa with Brian Mundubile. It happened to us in Pambashe with Brian Mundubile. This time I was alone. Brian wasn't there. It was just me, my driver, my ADC, and a few people that I had, and a security vehicle.
Yeah.
We were given that chase. Now, if you create that environment, and the day before the elections, there was violence of unprecedented order in Kasama. I just came from Kasama yesterday, chasing up on these cases where we reported how many of our people had been beaten up by the UPND cadres, and the police haven't arrested a single person. You know what they have said? There's a vehicle that they found which was being used by us. This story is in public domain. We had asked Honorable Kapianga to lend us his vehicle, and we'd given it to his driver. That is a vehicle the police have alleged that they found stones in it, and they called stones, as dangerous weapons. They have not arrested those kids who wanted to kill us with guns. Gunshots were actually fired at us. One of our security vehicles was, in fact, about 4 of our security vehicles were damaged maliciously by people who are known a day before the elections. During the totaling of the votes, they were looking for me, because they knew I was still keeping those papers. When they established where I was, at the total center where I was, they came and did what they called an operation, where they told the police to move away from the totaling center, and they ransacked the totaling center. I was sitting inside. One female police officer told me, Honorable Chisanga, it's either they kill you, okay, or you live to tell another story. I am asking you, leave the totaling center. 03 in the morning. We were sitting collecting votes in Lukashya constituency. And the guys I was with actually told me, they prevailed upon me, sir, this is just a by-election. Let's get out of here, because the damage of the vehicles we've seen outside and people who have been injured outside, who are your people? We think that these guys are aiming for you. So my security wasn't there. They cordoned me up. We used the bush, got out of that place. We were, and let me say this, there was one of the government functionaries who was there, who was extremely sympathetic to us, who told me, sir, I'm going to use my vehicle, but please hide. I went into that vehicle, hid, and he drove me out of that totaling center and took me home. And that's when you started hearing the results now changing. This is how the UPND won that election. Now, let me tell you the lesson that you have to learn from what has happened. The UPND has demonstrated a ruthless impunity with which they would like to make sure the next election is won. What they have done in the by-election for Kasama, in the by-election for Kawambwa, in the by-election for Pambashe, is basically making sure that they firm up on what they are capable of doing. And they did it, and they succeeded. The only solution to this problem is unity by the opposition as a first step. Second one, I'm urging the opposition to invest in security. Because believe it or not, if the police were professional and they saw what was happening, the DIG for the police was in Kasama. I met him in places where I didn't expect to meet the DIG. I even told Kasar, why am I not meeting any commissioner from the ECZ everywhere I'm going? The only person I'm meeting here is a DIG, accompanied with police who were armed to the teeth in the polling stations. So this is no longer an election that is managed by ECZ. These are elections that are managed by the police and the thugs of the UPND, who are prepared to make sure that the formula they have hatched is going to work. The only way they don't succeed in doing this is if the opposition do two things. Firstly, the opposition must unite on the basis of principle and on the basis of the truth and on the basis of realizing that the country has collapsed. They need to take action. Secondly, the opposition must agree to create a united security force, and I mean it. They need to make sure that the way we are going to protect these votes is to have people that know who know how to handle security, who are going to help us make sure to protect these votes. If we don't do those two things, Zach, the next election is not there's no guarantee for a win for the opposition.
I've listened to you attentively, and as a seasoned politician yourself, and the learned counsel, clearly what you've given to me is a lot of evidence,
yes,
to amount to a petition. Why didn't you?
We pondered on that possibility. This councillor, this mayor in Kasama is going to be in office for 3 months. And we have so much.
Justice is justice.
We have so much work to. Sometimes, when I was learning jurisprudence, one of my professors told me that even the most unsophisticated gambler would be wasting his time to go to a casino when you know that the vending machines or the dice have been tampered with by somebody. Beyond that, somebody has to conclude what that means. But the reality is that, resources are supposed to be deployed, are supposed to be deployed very importantly. We think that we have got a very serious election to prepare for, and we're preparing for it. I was in Kasama for the last 5 days, basically going around thanking the people, because I know that the people in Kasama voted for us. I went to thank them and started telling them that we're getting prepared, for the next election. We just need to put things in place before we did it. This is not the first time I'm going through this.
And remember, my question is, what does this mean to the BM8 project?
The BM8 project is getting even stronger because, look, the showing on the ground is very, very clear. Our project was very well received in Kasama. People came to us, they listened to us. They knew that we are running under the Tonse Alliance umbrella, and in Kasama we're utilizing the FDD. And those votes, if you counted them appropriately, you discover that we actually won by a big margin. So for us, we are very convinced that the BM8 project is entrenching itself. This is, this is a runaway train. It is already at the station. My appeal to all the Zambians is just for them to embrace the BM8 project and be part of it. My appeal to the opposition is that we need to set a stage for us to begin to speak to each other on the basis of principle and on the basis of thinking for the Zambians and agreeing what's the best way forward. And I think the BM8 project is that project that would like to bring everybody under the umbrella of a united opposition.
Now, you allege that based on what you have witnessed in the Kasama mayor election, is likely to be, it's a picture of what we expect in August. But to the contrary, President Hakainde Hichilema has stated that the 2026 election will be free and fair. So what do you mean when you say the violence you saw is likely to replicate itself come August?
In Bemba they say, what is happening today is supposed to be showing into the prism of what's going to happen in future. To be honest with you, if the president had been properly informed about the events that characterize the Pambashe by-election, the Kawambwa by-election, and most recently, the Kasama by-election, I think you should have called the security order of the country to order to sit down and say, how can we prepare for a free and fair election? It's on that I think information that gets to the president is not only distorted, it is deliberately skewed so that he could be made to put into public information that may not entirely be correct. And I sympathize with the president because he bases what the discussion or the dialogue is go to the public on what is fed to him. But I've just narrated what happened in Kasama. Right. There are police officers who can actually confirm what I've told you. If the president has heard what I've said, he may have to ask his command to relook at what happened not only in Kasama but also in Kawambwa and Pambashe so that he can get properly informed on what steps needs to be taken for us to guarantee a free and fair election in the general election. What worries me about this is that, you see, if a general election is a different presentation. It's a countrywide presentation. If these traits are going to be designed to be repeated in the general election, the opposition prepares itself to defend itself, it will create an environment that is going to be volatile for the election. It is possible to have a free and fair election. We had it in 2021. We had it in 2011. We had it in 2008. We had it in 2006. It depends on how the executive chooses to exercise its powers. The president, he's the one who has the deepest constitutional responsibility of making sure that the environment for a free and fair election exists by engaging the stakeholders and taking steps that are required to be taken to make sure that free and fair election is guaranteed. I'll tell you, the people that caused aggression in Kasama are the same people who caused aggression in Kawambwa. They're the same people who caused aggression in Pambashe. If the president wants to hear about who did it, he just needs to speak to somebody like Sean Tembo. He needs to speak to a young lady, who was assaulted in Kawambwa. He needs to speak to somebody like me. He needs to speak to somebody like Mr. Lombe in Kasama, who was badly assaulted, up to now is recovering from, he actually needed about 13 stitches on the forehead because he was actually hammered with a machete. The young man who came to save him was hammered was struck by a screwdriver in the head. He needed 7 stitches. I was with these people in the, both at the hospital when they came for treatment. I was with them at the police station when they were giving statements. The president can get this information. He's capable of being well informed and guiding the country properly in preparing the ground for a free and fair election.
Is opposition, is the opposition unity in sight, if I may ask? And I would like your thought, in addition to that, the role of the Council of Elders in this initiative.
Okay. I will make a blanket statement. Opposition unity is very possible in Zambia. And it's very possible if people who are leading organizations decide to take objective assessment of what is going on the ground and decide to agree with everybody that without unity, it will be very difficult for us to unseat the government which is in power right now. The only problem that I've seen is that I have no idea what has transpired this time around. I was a student in 1991 when the country decided to stand up against the one-party state of the UNIP government. In the formative ages, and the period was very short, in the formative stages of opposition, there were fragmented opposition organizations. I remember myself engaging General Mianda. I was a student at that time. And General Mianda is one of the most principled politicians I've ever come across in my life. And he calls me my son. And he told me that time, my son, let me tell you the truth. For me, it is not it should not be the case that the opposition must just unite for the sake of unity. There must be something that must bring us together, especially because we are facing a regime which is very strong and which is very well equipped, and that can actually dismantle us if we don't unite on the basis of principle. Of course, there were other stewards that made sure that there was opposition unity at that time. Akashamba Tambikusa can be picked out. Mbitachitara can be picked as one of those that drove the process of bringing this opposition together. Dr. Rejo Chonge at that time was one of the lawyers that I respected very much. He was a central figure in trying to make sure that opposition united at that time. But see, these people were united around a principle, and they brought about the MMD, and the MMD took the day when we went to election. It is very possible for us to also bring opposition unity together. The only thing that has happened is that the environment seems to have changed. But one thing that has remained constant is that yet at this time, most of the people who are supposed to lead opposition unity have decided to take what are called Lone Ranger, approaches to solving the Zambian problem. Each one of them would like to take his political party in a particular direction. There must be some common ground that must bring us together. And this is where the role of Council of Elders, comes in. Fortunately for us, Dr. Mbitachitara is still alive and is very active in trying to bring opposition together. Boaka is still very much alive. We would like to bring the parties together. From here, I'm going to look for Mr. Faxon Shamenda, with whom I've been speaking to for the last 10 days, to try and see how can we sit together and bring the opposition together. Because these people, they are drawing on the experiences that the country has had under UNIP, under MMD and currently now under UPND. They are very much sure that the only way that we can unseat this government, is by bringing opposition together. You see how the UPND is responding to this. My younger brother, Cornelius Matwa, is basically, at any time that he has an opportunity, he's issuing invectives against this Council of Elders, insulting them. If I was him, to be honest with you, I would have told the Republican president, there may be sense in what these Council of Elders are saying. Can we try and see, even from our perspective, if we can engage them? The Council of Elders has identified the malaise that have come into this country because of politics. They have discovered that the country is on the verge of collapse. And the only way we avoid the country collapsing is by bringing the opposition together. So it is now up to us who are in the opposition to open our ears and listen to the Council of Elders. But what you have seen is that even among us, the opposition, some people have started vilifying the Council of Elders. There's no village without elders. And whenever we are before with a problem in the village, the wisdom, very much of it comes from the elders. They have nothing to lose, these people. They have done their part for the nation. They are only looking back and thinking, we have identified that there's a problem in this nation and we should be part of the process, or we should lead the process of finding a solution to the problem. The beauty about getting counsel from the elders is that you then have an opportunity yourself, or an option. Do we take the advice that has been given to us by the Council of Elders, or do we dispense with it? But what is very important is for you to agree that at least we are going to listen to the Council of Elders, and we are going to ensure that we take on board what they're going to recommend we need to do. I think we need to make ourselves available to what the Council of Elders are going to do.
And I think this is the reason why I keep some sort of doubt that this whole unity of the opposition, and of course backed by Council of Elders, whether it's possible to realize unity, because even just within the Patriotic Front, the bigger opposition. First of all, let's start with the bigger opposition. The bigger opposition itself, it's failing to demonstrate unity. Let me tell you that now I don't know who is calling the other or inviting the other, because we've heard that Brian Mundubile has extended an olive branch to Makebi to, come in and work together. Makebi, on the other hand, has branded Brian Mundubile as a prodigal and asked him to come back home. I mean, this is a reason why I'm saying unity is far-fetched in opposition, really.
Yeah.
What's your thought on the fact that there's this?
I must say that if my younger brother Makebi has branded Brian as a prodigal son, it is a remark that I take as a very unfortunate remark. And I mean that. Because from the time that we started the project of Brian being the president of the Patriotic Front back in 2022, I think me and Makebi and others have been speaking the same language. We have fronted Brian, we have supported Brian, and we've run with Brian. Of course, people change their minds. And for me, I would respect that Makebi may have changed his mind and decided he's going to put himself in the contest as well. I must let you know, and I think I've said this before on this radio station, that even I have been, prodded to front myself as one of the guys who should present himself as leader for the Patriotic Front. But you see, realizing the engagements I've been having, even with the late President, Mr. Edgar Lungu, on how the future of the party must be. Some engagements which we had in the presence of even some of the most senior members of the Patriotic Front, I came to the realization that this is not time for us to take self-serving interests and putting them in front of everything that we are doing. But even when you hear that Makebi is branding Brian as, a prodigal son, look, the first thing you want to do is, Jesus was using parables to teach wisdom. Okay, when he talked about the story of the prodigal son, he taught wisdom. And the prodigal son had a parent to go back to. Okay, to ask Brian to come back to the fold as a prodigal son, where is he going to come back to? Unfortunately, we have allowed the Patriotic Front to collapse. But this is a story for another day. We were supporting the acting president, up until the time we realized, okay, we are not taking ourselves in a direction that's supposed to be taken. And speaking for myself, I tried as much as possible to sit with the acting president and counsel him, including suggesting to him that some of the decisions that he has taken are not supported by the constitution. And if he can, to help to lead the party, he should reverse some of those decisions. It was within his mandate to agree with my counsel or not to agree with my counsel. From what I was able to establish, he didn't agree with my counsel. Okay? But members of parliament decided we need to support somebody who can lead this movement forward. And that's why we put our support behind Brian Mundubile. Brian Mundubile, to be honest with you, has been leading the initiative of making sure that we bring everybody on board and bring ourselves under the same umbrella of Tonse Alliance. Okay, even when we had difficulties in getting the PF continue to lead Tonse Alliance, he participated in an initiative that made sure that we recreated the leadership in the Tonse Alliance without losing the steam that ECL had put in the Tonse Alliance. Because remember, the initiative of Tonse Alliance, I think my younger brother, Dr. Zumani, has explained it thoroughly. And Zumani and I, most of the times, used to find ourselves at the side of Edgar Lungu when he was crafting Tonse Alliance. I was providing legal opinions on how we can proceed. Zuman was providing political opinions on how we can proceed. What resulted was actually the workings of what Zumani had done. Sean also had his own part. But where we have reached is a stage where the only thing that works is unity. And when you hear my younger brother Makebi, branding Brian as Prodigal and asking him to come back to the fold, you begin to feel very uncomfortable and unfortunate, because Brian, I can tell you, it was the major consultant that Brian has in the Tonse Alliance, and I must say this for the public to know, is myself. The role I play in Tonse is to be the number one consultant that Brian Mundubile has on the steps we're going to take. In that regard, he even discloses to me everybody that is been engaging. I know all the people that Brian has been speaking to, locally and even internationally, to try and build up this Tonse initiative. And Makebi and Brian have engaged. They have spoken to each other. What has been discussed, I can't divulge, because for me it was given to me in confidence. But I can speak for the public to hear that at least they have been having meetings. They've been speaking to each other. So it came as a surprise to me that Makebi could brand Brian as Prodigal and ask that he comes back to the fold. It is a very unfortunate remark to make, even when the people are expecting it to build one unified opposition. And by extension, I can talk about what other people have said. You heard what Kevin Fube said about Brian.
And Fred as well. And Fred Membe as well. Yeah.
Unfortunately, these statements cannot be coming from the opposition figures speaking of and about another opposition figure. The only way you get unity built up is when you have an opportunity to speak to each other, you go behind curtains and speak about it. For me, I found it extremely unfortunate that KBF was able to make those remarks about Brian. Very, very unfortunate to even begin to think that, Makebi was very close to Mr. Lungu because of Brian. Makebi, yes, was providing legal services to Mr. Lungu, but politically, Brian and Mr. Lungu were speaking on almost a daily basis. Even towards the end of Mr. Lungu's life, if you saw, about 2 weeks or 10 days before he passed, he appointed Brian as chairman for parliamentary affairs for Tonse Alliance. Why? What was he doing? He was sending a message to all of us. He incorporated all the people that he knew were strong in the patriotic front into the council of leaders in the Tonse Alliance. He was actually creating a movement that was going to be led by, among others, Brian Mundubile and others. And you see, true to what Mr. Lungu was, a statesman, he maintained the respect that he had for Mr. Lubinda and kept him as the acting president of Patriotic Front and even told him he's going to lead Tonse in my absence. That's how resolved Mr. Lungu was, to make sure that Brian remained within the echelons of power within the Tonse Alliance. So for somebody like Kelvin, who hasn't even been in the Tonse Alliance when Mr. Lungu was alive, to come and begin to pretend or pretentiously say that, Brian wasn't close to Mr. Lungu, it's an unfortunate remark. But for me, I wouldn't want us to escalate the fight amongst the opposition political leaders. I would rather we bring them together and see them together, iron out whatever differences they have, and agree that a person who's going to lead this movement is the one who has an agenda for the nation, is the one who has got a following in the nation, and is the one who can stand up to the person who's in government now and unseat him. And that person, quite frankly, is sitting where I'm sitting and seeing what I've seen, is Brian Mundubile. So apart from what I've said, I wouldn't like to make other disclosures, but I would like that, a person like Makebi reflects on what he's saying when he's engaging the public, particularly in regard to their relationship with Brian, because I think we've tried to build it, even when it is very, very difficult to build it, given what the supporters are saying on both sides of a divide. But you should see what is very consistent with Brian. Huh? You will never hear Brian speak negatively about any opposition political leader. He never does that. Rather, he chooses to reach out and make sure that we find common ground, or now we can move the opposition unity forward. Because we have accepted that the ground has accepted that this is a person who's a forerunner or a front runner in the opposition. The only way we can do is to build this profile, rather begin to pull it back. So it's a very, very unfortunate here. I haven't heard my elder brother, with respect, my elder brother, Dr. Membe, specifically mentioned Brian. But what I've heard him say is that he thinks that others, within the opposition are thieves, others within the opposition are entrepreneurs. It's very, very unfortunate when you are going to war, because this is no longer politics as usual. In Zambia, what we are facing is political war. It is very, very unfortunate when you go into war, then you begin to classify people in the most negative of ways so that people can begin to think you are the only one who can lead the opposition. It is very, very unfair. But see, history teaches lessons. Huh? Nobody knew that Edgar was going to come out as a front runner in the Patriotic Front when the contest to take over from Sata was. He was actually at the back. You know, the Post newspaper that Mr. Membe was running kept classifying or casting Edgar Lungu in the most negative of forms. You know, one time I read the title, Chagwa Agua Pansi, you know, like really. And then there were all things, he just drinks, he goes to Chawama and everything. But here we are sitting now with a record of somebody who almost ulile, and when an opportunity was given to him to govern the country, yes, he wasn't perfect, he had his own flaws. But now we are able to make comparisons of what Edgar's 7 years did to the nation and what the last 5 years of UPND has done to the nation. And quite frankly, anybody who has judged objectively has established that Edgar availed himself to the powers that are given to presidents and managed them well with improvement. In my assessment, if we had given Edgar Lungu a chance to win 2021, and which I believe he even won, we would have been at a much better place because at least he had tried to show that he can refine himself, he can refine those who surround him, and he can rebuild the structure. You know why there are so many independent members of parliament in parliament right now? It is because of the personal decision Edgar made. Some of these were his own children. Some of these were his own boys, but he felt we are cleaning up the process of politics. Let's not push them into parliament. He didn't adopt them under the Patriotic Front, but because they had gained their own ground, they had made their own names where they came from, they decided to contest the independent, and they're in parliament. And frankly speaking, if they had arrived in parliament and Edgar had won that election, I think they would have been very different and very effective independent members of parliament because we would have embraced them. That's one thing that Edgar had the capacity to do. But see, the point I'm making is that sometimes some of these people are thinking they are smarter than Brian Mundubile. Some of them think that they are better positioned to run the country, the affairs of the nation than Brian Mundubile. But the people are already given their verdict. They are only getting ready for 13th of August 2026, and they will elect Brian Mundubile, and he will demonstrate, just as Edgar demonstrated, that
This is the Thursday edition of The Burning Issue here on the Happy World of 5 FM radio, also live on Isunga radio, Tuta radio, and of course Muchinga radio as well in Chinsali, ZFM in Kapiri, iWave FM in Chingola, Platinum radio in Indola, Spice FM in Kabwe, Katete FM in Katete, and BMTV here in Lusaka on Top Star channel 114. And later, very soon, I will be opening the phone lines for you, our listener, to participate. But also keep sending us your comments on our Facebook page. That's 5FM Radio Zambia. Now, I have two statements that so far has been made by the Attorney General. First of all, let's start with the most recent one. The Attorney General, Mulilo Kabesha, has actually disclosed that Zambia may actually undertake a complete repeal of the constitution once the process is fully budgeted for in 2027. Your thoughts on this statement?
Look, to be honest with you, the constitutional journey that we have undertaken under the watch of the UPND is a tragedy that has happened to the Republic of Zambia. And it is even unfair. It is grossly unjust for the Attorney General who has presided over a shambolic attempt to amend the Constitution, a divisive attempt to amend the Constitution, and we have achieved divisiveness now. You've seen what has happened with Act number 13 of 2025. It is very unfortunate and grossly unfair for the Attorney General to even open his mouth and suggest that if the UPND wins government, they are going to amend the Constitution again. Dear Zambians, here is a message from the Chairman for Legal and Constitutional Affairs from the Patriotic Front. This Attorney General, it is only God who can make him open his mouth at this time and make such an inflammatory statement as suggesting that they would like to have another go at an amendment of our Constitution, given how shambolic they've handled Bill number 7. given how unconstitutional, these people have abrogated every non-constitutional rule. These people have defied, the directive of the Constitutional Court and achieved the end of amending a constitution in the most unfortunate manner. And for them to come back to the public and suggest to you that should they win, which I know they're not going to win, they are going to amend the constitution. Here is the reason why you must, as Zambians, rise up in your numbers on the 13th of August 2026 and vote this party out. Because they want to continue on the journey of mutilating this constitution, creating a constitutional order that is very divisive, creating a constitutional order that takes everything away that we put in the constitutional democracy that we set for ourselves in 2016 when we enacted Act number 2 of 2016. I have no idea how somebody who was presided over a very unfortunate amendment to the Constitution can have the audacity of standing up today and saying, we are going to amend the Constitution yet again after we win elections. Zambians, you have just been given the reason why you cannot continue to trust this political party called the UPND. Because now it is very clear that for the first time in Zambia, we're being led by a party that says something and does completely a different thing from what they had said. So even when they're saying what they're saying to you now, that amendment they're talking about is never intended to achieve your objective or to respond to the aspirations and needs as a Zambian people. It is to perpetuate their stay in power. People have already started, speculating on why they would want to amend the constitution, next year. And they've actually started saying this is about to come and, prolong the presidential powers by removing the limit of a presidents. But I think that we have a solution to this problem as a nation. The only solution we have to this problem as a nation is to stand up in numbers on the 13th of August 2026. Go and elect the party that you think can come and respect and protect your constitution, respect and protect and guarantee your freedom, regardless of what political party you belong to. The chance is now coming, and it is becoming very clear. These are war cries. What you are hearing from Attorney General are war cries of how they're going to further decimate your constitution if you gave them the opportunity to become, to go about changing the constitutional order. The constitutional order we put in place in 2016, it is the one that firmly guaranteed one Zambia, one nation. It is the one that firmly guaranteed our freedom. And it made what I have argued this point before on your radio, Gazak, when I was speaking to you. The constitutional order that we put in place in 2016 is the one that guarantees what is called presidential regional neutrality. That regardless of where you come from in this country, you can still become the president. What you are beginning to see now with Act number 13 of 2026, we are departing from where it is. What you are now, listen to the noise that is taking place about delimitation. I just came from Kasama myself. People are extremely disillusioned about this delimitation, the way they're going to do it. We have a delimitation report of 2019. I had said it on your radio station. Take that delimitation report of 2019. Now compare it with what has come through with the UPND. They are actually skewing this nation, to a style where the political elites will be choosing, who is going to be the president. The political elite will be choosing how parliament is going to be controlled. In fact, we are just about to lose the credibility of parliament. Because have you counted how many people are going to come to that parliament through first direct nomination by the president and secondly through the so-called proportional representation, which unfortunately it's only in Zambia where you tie the proportional representation to the percentage of the votes that are poured by a presidential candidate. And can you imagine if, and this is expected, if the president loses in 2026, if another president who will come into power decides to be a dictator, and uses this constitutional amendment that we've got, this parliament will have collapsed. But we have been in engagements with the stakeholders. We have assured them that if we win the next election, yes, not the kind of amendment that Mr. Lukashya is talking about, we are going to amend the constitution to revert it to where it was when we enacted Act number 2 of 2016, because that constitutional order guarantees political participation of all Zambians regardless of where they come from, of all Zambians regardless of a political party they belong to. Because we don't want an elitist constitutional order. We want a constitutional order that is constitutionally democratic, that everybody has a role to play in the political process of the nation.
Let me give you another statement that recently was announced, which I strongly feel this is, you are a learned counsel, you will advise, maybe I'm wrong, but it's good for the judiciary. The fact that there's the number of high court judges in Zambia has actually been increased to a maximum of 100, up to from 60. And this is up to from 60 as part of the superior courts. Number of Judges Act of 2025 to tackle case backlogs. Now, prior to this, in 2021, we are also aware that the number of judges increased from 41 to 51, with further, obviously, frequent smaller appointments that were made by President Hakainde Hichilema. But is backlogs in terms of cases justifying the increase in number of judges?
I am a lawyer, and I practiced law for about 30 years. In fact, now I appear before courts very sparingly, because I have elevated myself to a place where I would like to get into activism that fights to restore confidence in the judiciary, and also restores respect that the public must have in the judiciary. And I would be the first one to acknowledge, that Zambia indeed has a need for us to increase the establishment in the judicature, especially in the superior courts of the country. But let me tell you something that might shock you. There is no correlation between the increase of the number of the judiciary and, one, the quality of justice that comes from the courts, and two, the expedited nature in which cases are disposed of in courts. There is so much that goes into case management in the judicature, and some of us have studied it at a professional level. The misfortune we have is, look, we need to be deliberate as leaders and explain to the nation that if we want to improve the quality and competencies in the judiciary, we are not only going to increase the establishment of the judiciary, but we are also going to ensure that the best among us legal practitioners are the ones who make it to the judicature. We are going to be deliberate in doing that. But unfortunately, what is happening, and this is the case not only in Zambia, but in several other countries within Africa, we have developed this thinking that is rather fallacious, that a judge is an employee. Like this thinking of, we're increasing the number of judges to 100 because we'd like to employ people. I have argued several times that a judge is not an employee. A judge is a sovereign, inasmuch as the president is a sovereign, inasmuch as a legislator like myself is a sovereign. When we acknowledge and resolve that we are increasing the establishment of the judiciary for purposes of making sure that we capacitate the sovereignty or the third wing of the sovereignty of the nation, then we allow a process that is so transparent, that is so open to scrutiny, and in which major stakeholders participate in picking, using an open criteria, who goes to the bench. Then we'll be achieving what you are saying you want to achieve, what the Attorney General is saying we're going to achieve. It is not enough to just say we're going to start to increase capacity and we're going to employ people. No, we must get people of impeccable capacity, quality or character to sit in those benches. People who are going to be brave, people who are going to realize that they discharge a sovereign function, and people who are not going to cow down to the intrusion of the executive or in the intrusion of any other person in the judicature. That's the only way we can actually achieve that, which is why in countries like America, certain judicial positions are also elective. You give it to stakeholders themselves to say we're going to elect. But you see, I admire the Commonwealth practice of appointment of judges, but it has certain conditions that must prevail as you exercise those powers to appoint judges. And one of which is supposed to be a transparent and open process of making sure that the best among us practicing lawyers are the ones who get there. But most importantly, people who know they're going to discharge a sovereign function in the judiciary, and people who know what accountability demands exist for a judge. Once these things are put in place, then we are achieving something. But if we don't put in this, which is what is the case currently, we have nothing, we don't have a foundation for making sure that our judges, we appoint people that understand their levels of accountability in the judicature, that we have a process that allows us to appoint people that are brave. You know, even the Bible has got a criteria of how they are appointing judges. You use that criteria, you discover that most of the people who ended up at the bench are not even qualified to be at the bench. And the misfortune is if you appoint a wrong person to the bench, then you create a problem for the nation. Because that person is not going to discharge his functions, who are going to suffer, stakeholders who are supposed to access justice. So I want to make this demand that, yes, indeed, it's important that we increase capacity in the judicature. But can we, as a nation, deliberately, and this is what we are doing in Tonse Alliance, for us, our journey to judicial reform is going to be a robust journey. It is actually going to be a very serious journey that will ensure that we take the judicature and give it the level of accountability that is demanded of it, but also give it the level of respect and confidence that the public has in the judicature to make sure that when they are betrayed, on cases, people are going to go home and sleep and say, oh, yeah, well done. I mean, yesterday I was reading some story, I haven't even verified it, that some drug dealer on the Copper Belt has been given a sentence that looks extremely strange. That I think they've been sentenced to like 3 years, and they're only going to serve 5 years over 3 years because the part of it is being suspended. Are you serious about the fight against drug peddling and drug dealing in the nation? Make comparisons between what we do and a wild way in which they do it in the tiger economies, where they can even throw you in a crocodile-infested river to kill you because you've been drug peddling. But you see, we have a system of justice in this country that is selective. You can't do it. I've also heard the story where I think somebody has been given bail for about 60,000 kwacha on a misdemeanor, and they have been sent back to custody because they haven't met the bail conditions. These are issues that I've made topical in the last 2 years as I speak to the judiciary. And I argue this, that there are some people in the judiciary that have decided that they're going to, for lack of a better term, hire themselves up to the political elites and start doing the bidding for the political elites. That's not how you strengthen the judiciary. So even when we're beginning to talk about this reform, we must talk about this reform even looking at the character of the people we're going to appoint to become judges. I must say for a fact, there are judges in this country, and magistrates, I must add, who are very firm, who know what their mandate is and who know what their assignment is. We are making it very hard for these kinds of judges and magistrates to do their work because, again, we're infusing the judiciary with people that we know are not even cut out to be judges in the first place. So this is an issue that the nation must take a keen interest on, because even if the quality of justice is compromised, then the whole nation collapses. We can collapse almost everything in the nation, but once the quality of justice in the country collapses because of political interference and also because of political patronage, it becomes a problem for the nation.
This is the Thursday edition of The Burning Issue. Once again, our guest is Honorable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament for Lukashya constituency. And we will now be taking your phone calls on 0955221515. And please call us now and keep your comments within a minute. And also, we've got a couple of messages on our Facebook page. Keep sending them on 5FM Radio Zambia. And also remember on BMTV Zambia Facebook page, you can like that page, share it, and indeed leave us a comment if you can. We'll be grateful. Now, so before we take the phone calls, let me just quickly have a look at what we have on our Facebook page. This one, I think that this one is this one is from John P. Pondala, who says, "Good morning, Mr. Zak and Mr. Chisanga. The greediness and selfishness in the opposition camp is what will actually give President Hakainde Hichilema a resounding victory come 13th of August. Vachisanga, this one is from Matthews Weupe. It says, Vachisanga, you came very well. Let me just have a look at it in full quickly. Mm-hmm. Okay, Vachisanga, you came well about approach to unity, or rather to unify the opposition. But is Mundubile doing a right thing? And you expect him to unite the opposition when fraudulently got it, and you believe him not knowing he is another Chabinga in the alliance. Let's hear your thoughts on those two. And be brief so that I can give you some.
Okay.
more.
I with the first the message, I can't agree with him more. You see, I made a very emphatic demand here on opposition unity, and based on principle, and based on the need for us to ensure that we understand what Zambians are expecting. I agree. It will be very difficult, although not impossible, for us to unseat the current president if we don't unite. So I agree that we need to have unity. But see, unity must be based on principle. If he was hearing me, I deliberately explained the portion that I had, a discussion I had in 1991 with General Mianda, who told me, and I was a young leader at that time. I don't call myself a politician. I was a young leader at that time when he told me unity without principle is a waste of time. Unity without agreeing where we are going is a waste of time, because he used the phrase in the Bible, two cannot move together unless they are agreed. So yes, there's need for unity amongst the opposition, but can we have a foundation for unity? Every political party in the opposition has got a secretariat. My thinking is the starting point is to bring the secretariats together, sit them together, let them create a basic, maybe 10 basic principles that we all ascribe to agree that this is the direction we're going to go. But in terms of choosing a leader who's going to unify, it's a process that has to be undertaken with the participation of other stakeholders. And this is why, to answer Wope, it's be difficult for me to suggest something. Of course, he's talking about, he's suggesting to me that Mr. Mundubile took the leadership of the Tonse Alliance by some fraudulent means, which I don't agree with. Because Tonse Alliance was an initiative that was created because of the problems that we had noticed had beleaguered the Patriotic Front, and were not finishing, mainly because of the interference from outside, but also with the direction that the leadership of Patriotic Front was taking. And Tonse was not only PF, Tonse was every other stakeholder within Tonse. And they took steps, Mr. Wope must have followed, that they had respected the Patriotic Front as the anchor party in the Tonse to lead the process of creating leadership within Tonse. When PF failed to do that, because of lack of decision, because of inertia, and also, unfortunately, because of selfishness, Tonse then decided to create a different formula through which to create a leader, because we needed to have a leader. And that leader emerged through a process of consultation with Tonse and the participation of everybody in the Council of Leadership as recreated. Mr. Wope may not agree with what he did, but you see, sometimes when we get into critical situations, you must take initiatives that actually work for the benefit of the people who are following you. The Tonse project has now, embraced the BM agenda, and people are coming on the BM agenda. This is not to say we're exclusive. We are prepared to engage others who are going to come forth and create leadership in the open, because what we're looking for at the end of the day is united leadership. But it must be acknowledged that there must be somebody who is fronting what is transpiring. And so far, with the work that we've done as BM8 and Tonse, we know that we can engage in effective dialogue with others and create a united opposition, or which Mr. Wope is actually welcome to be part.
This is 5FM Radio, and of course the Thursday edition of The Burning Issue. The number that you are calling us on is 0955 221515. I just had a slight hiccup on that line. It should be coming back on in a moment, just now. So just continue trying on 0955 221515. Let me quickly look at what we have again on our Facebook page. Look out for 5FM Radio Zambia and send us your comment. All right. Dennis Kalue Mwene on Facebook says, my older brother, Honorable Chisanga, there seems to be out of touch with reality, making comparison between Hakainde Hichilema, HH, and late President ECL, and concluding that the late ECL was better president than President HH is totally wrong. ECL and his government totally messed up the economy, while on the other hand, President Hakainde Hichilema has brought back the Zambian economy back on track to an extent where, Zambian economy is being praised by outsiders. Honorable Chisanga needs to take off political specs he is wearing and be truthful. His ECL's performance in government was not good at all. All right. Henry Mavimba, let me take Henry Mavimba on Facebook as well, says, good morning, Council. Regarding frequent amendments to the Supreme Law, we implore on the people representatives legislate a referendum law that will actually allow citizens to approve or reject such amendments to the Constitution or Bill of Rights. If this is put in place, it will offer democratic safeguards, independent oversight by citizens, high legal standing in courts, among other measures. All right. And he goes on to say we cannot have a constitution that is amended every time a new government emerges. Let me quickly give you some phone calls. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you very much for calling. You are through to the burning issue. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Mrs. Totela from Kavu.
Mrs. Chitotela.
Mkwai. Junior Totela from Kavu.
Mkwai.
Honorable Mishani.
Bwana Chitotela mapa nipa mkweba mumishani.
Wino wale Chisanga.
Cha kutasha lesa wama.
Mkwai na poshana wa moderator kuwina mwabukashani.
Tuatasha mayo.
Mkwai honorable Kamulondolele pishinga konzo kumwambile ndeo ufa.
Na Totela mkwai.
Balile ako batumwane walubile bamundulile tabaluba.
Mkwai.
Kie niwe na bafilebe baikatana bamundulile.
Mkwai.
Bali ino nstahili koni second ho.
Mkwai.
Ibuntu ngwa namba 2. Bantu ngatatu posele kwa mano. Ndemye bana bachotela baba kujeleta bakafume.
Mkwai.
Na papa ta tenti kosele shaba mundubile. Tikatane chako sapata palifya kwa batulelolera tuitite nitite. Tien tuikataneke. Natu mfoko kupambashe fialiko. Tuwalishile kumpika konsefi aliko. Kali ino isaili ya mingalato walanda tuwapika kunma wa ikatapa mgoshi. Ya ine mingalato ya konga maba election. Umona maba election. Tapawa na abaya tuntulu. Imbi na alipona polling agent kuna kwenye kukabu. Yafiali fi tuntulu. Mwanze mwajive wati security ya bantu. Ewa na maba election na bantu waluila kwa katuichi. Wati moe nani general election. TNT katane tungile ba blind Mundubile. Abaye ngesa tulubula ko bakalule naba mjele bote. Abantu balelila mchalo eti na papa tamuombe wewe.
Na Totela Chitotela, thank you very much.
Tuatasha mkwai 0955221515. That's the number you're calling us on. You too can add a voice. I'll take one more call and then you can respond. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning to you. Thank you very much for calling. Please share your name and where you're calling us from.
General Chongo calling from Kabwe.
General Chongo. Mkwai, please go ahead, sir.
Chisanga we suma honorable Mwashibukeni.
Shima poleni ma General Mlishani Makalamba. Good to hear from you after a long time.
Kale sana wa Chisanga. Kale tulika mkwa icho ndela nda wa Chisanga. Muli inkasha milimo.
Na Totela.
Because what you are speaking, if we have one language like what you are speaking, I think this government of lies, it needed to go. Because Wakalamba Bachisanga, Ichimemba Chitila, Uli Mumupundu, Impundu Shipona. Because the development here to Mwene Kuria Babantu is arresting only the opposition and amending the bills. Where is the development in a legacy? To Kishirapo. So imwe Chisanga background tapali uwafya is you there in fact we need to unite because chile moneka kwati abomulina wokuneki bamo they have been given other things kuli uteko kutilati wena ule iyo tonse alliance so we need to go muli veko hii yakaleba Chisanga twapapata sana because imwena ba Mundubile na bonse abonga tatwike tene imwe blood ya ifofwe na Zambia uwa suffering ikaba pali imwe mwe bali kumulu mulashire kita unite iyi chance na imoneka because tukiri mu wilderness na lelo tatura imona tena ni muri government ya bufi. As I conclude Chisanga, tule milombela kwe Chisuma na ba Mundubile, even ba Rubinda, we need to unite because there are only two people aba kweti abantisi Mundubile and Matebi Zulu so much so that lesa sontasyo muntu mo ate one time kale valikawa Chisanga kuli government yabu fee. Thank you very much.
General Chongo, quick responses to that.
Okay, I think the first one was Dennis, and I think Chongo has partly answered what Dennis was. Look, we need to be pragmatic, and for me, I make no illusions about the fact that yes, I'm prying in politics, but I'm not a politician. I am actually a leader prying in politics. Believe it or not, I have made my comparisons between what the UPND government is doing and what the ECL government did. I said earlier on, Edgar Lungu was not panacea. He was not an angel. He had his own flaws. But this is a man who had totally committed himself to the presidency. This is a man who had made sure that he understood his mandate and he understood what his responsibilities were. Look, the one thing that people fought Edgar Lungu for, I think, are cadres and some alleged stories of corruption. I told you many times, and I hope you can answer me, Zach, one day just give me 2 hours to come and talk about how Edgar fared in matters to do with cadres and how Edgar fared in matters to do with corruption. But to just briefly explain to you, Edgar came at the backdrop of a contest, a very hot contest for power within the Patriotic Front, where people didn't believe that anybody like Edgar could run the affairs of that party. He was a last runner, he wasn't the front runner. But the way God's wisdom operated, they gave him the presidency. And if you saw what Edgar did as president, within those 5 years, yes, it was very difficult because the cadres are the ones who thrusted him forward. You see, there was a competition between the ruling elites and the cadres about who should rule the Patriotic Front. But see, because PF was a people's movement, created by Basata, cadres outnumbered the ruling elites. But Edgar embraced both the ruling elites and the cadres. The ruling elites started thinking that Edgar was their project and that therefore they would control him when he was president. And he tried to show them, you can't control me, which is why then cadres felt they could fill the space left by the ruling elites. But true to the man's character of a leader, in 2019, 2020, I personally, I can tell you, I had a meeting with ECL. And the biggest problem that he told me, that time I wasn't even an MP. 2019, I wasn't an MP. I was just one of those who advised him close range. He told me, young man, the biggest challenge I have is how to bring this party to where we're supposed to have it in 2021, next to the elections. Why? Because this party now seems to be owned by cadres. Why? Because my friends had distanced themselves from me. And you can see, you can even pinpoint how many people who had been with Edgar had left by that time. But said, I would like to bring these people back. And I would also like to make cadres realize that we are losing credibility because of the actions they get. So he's a man who used to identify a problem and begin to deal with it, which is why, like I told you, in 2021, we had so many independents because, you see, he had tried to reform and he had already reconciled with Chimbakambwiri, reconciled with GBM, brought them back to the fold and was trying very much to reconcile with others who had remained on the outside. If we had believed in what the Patriotic Front was created for at that time, and many other people who had even remained on the outside of the fold had come to the fold with Edgar, believe it or not, it was going to be easy for us to win 2021, and therefore would have actually continue to reform the party. That's how he had resolved to do it. On the economic front, PF is a party that will always be remembered for having involved itself in serious infrastructure development. Now, that means clearly that the money that was borrowed by PF is very visible where it was. You saw when the Minister of Finance was giving a statement 2 weeks ago, I asked him a question. I said, Minister, now, because first, Bino Mpundu had established that they had borrowed more in 5 years than PF had borrowed. And these are people who had said they were not going to borrow. You notice the minister was even getting infuriated because we told him, you had come on the campaign that you will never borrow money. And you have borrowed money, but we have not seen where the money has gone. And he started giving very myriad explanations of where the money went. I stood up and asked him a very simple question. Sir, amongst the proportions of this money that you've borrowed, how much of it has gone to recurrent expenditure? How much of it has gone to infrastructure development or capital projects? He fumbled. He was not able to even explain it. But what you saw with the PF under Edgar Lungu is we went on a massive infrastructure development project, as we had told the people we were going to do when we were campaigning. Now, when we were doing that, of course, we knew that Zambia, being a country that wasn't very rich, we would have to borrow money to put up infrastructure development. But infrastructure, when you borrow and use the money properly, it pays itself back. Mr. Dennis, is it Dennis? Yes. He must realize, for instance, that the president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, he himself acknowledged that massive project, the biggest investment PF has ever done, is the Kazungura Bridge. He himself acknowledged that bridge it was almost paying itself out in about 3 years of its being used. Because why? The money that was borrowed was utilized to put up that infrastructure, and the traffic that was eased and the movement of goods and services between here and South Africa was eased, but also the generation of income was enhanced. The same thing we would have had to do if we had gone into mining with the policies that we had gone into. So when I'm comparing, what HH did and what Mr. Lungu has, what ECO is doing and what Mr. HH is doing now, I have the confidence that in terms of performance, we were far much better than they are, because all they have done ni kulipira Nkongole na kubweza Nkongole. Let him point to any infrastructure development that they have done. Look at the infrastructure development policies that they've started doing. PPP projects. PP projects at the time when you can't identify a credible PP partner. What you do is you find money. When you're doing a PP project, you must find a partner who can bring in money in the nation. I can use an example of this Lusaka and Ndora dual carriageway. The thinking then was that if they get into power, they're going to find a PP partner who was going to come and fund the project and construct it and repay himself using targets. What did they do instead? They created, not found, they created a PP partner, I think Ocean something, I don't know what its name is, and gave and took money from the pensioners. Zach, I can speculate here that maybe our pension sector is even collapsed, because so much money was taken out of the pension sector and given to this company, and they were told, construct a PPP. In fact, this PPP project is a big headache to Zambians. We just need to realize and study it and understand that this is a huge cost to the Zambian people. Why? Because you take money from the pensioners, give it to a PP project.
But it's not like it's free money. This is loaned money.
Yeah, but first
with interest.
But first, it departs from a real concept of a PP project. A PP project, the partner brings their own resources. Where they borrow it is not supposed to be a responsibility. But you as a government, you are the one who will initiate a process where they come and borrow from your pensions and put it into the project. But not even just that. Then you also give them targets. So you decide how they're going to borrow the money. You also create a process by which they're going to repay themselves. You call that a PP project.
But would you rather them borrow from abroad and externalize what they will collect,
the money
borrow from within and pay back from within?
The money from abroad is very cheap to start with. They would have borrowed money very cheaply to bring it here. But also then you would have made sure that the targets remain the income for the government. But now you have privatized targets. Giving them, like I said, just understand it from this perspective. You decide how they are going to implement the PP project as government. You even tell them where to come and borrow the money, and then you create a means by which they're going to repay themselves. And remember, those targets were constructed at the cost of a government. Then you give them to a private developer, and you call that prudent investment. It's not prudent. It can't be compared to what the Patriotic Front did. But the important thing is that the comparison I've made between how the UPND has operated or has performed in government is we are far much better as PF if you make those comparisons. This is to answer to what Dennis has said. Vanat Totera, Mr. Mavimba, you heard what I said earlier on. The sacrosancy of the Constitution is something that Mr. Kavesha Mulilo, who is supposed to be the leader of the bar, is supposed to protect. Is one of the things that gives value to a constitution is the number of times that you subject it to amendment. That's why when Patriotic Front came into power, we had wanted to amend it with just one bullet shot. I have explained this so many times when I've come to radio that clearly Michael Sata understood what he wanted to do with the constitution. You see, we took all the CRC review process that had taken place from independence up to the last one under Mr. Mwanakatwe and put them together and said, we give it to a technical committee and we author a people's draft, which then resulted into Act number 2. Of course, things didn't go as we planned because first the initiator himself died in office, but when Edgar Lungu took over, he proceeded with the same process, albeit because of the time that had reduced, he reduced the scope of the works. But even in the scopes of the works, we did the correct thing and made sure we came up with Act number 2 of 2016. I have argued, and I've seen it because I've traveled in the region as a lawyer, that Act number 2 of 2016 is an admired piece of legislation, not only in the country, but even in the region. And what we tried to do with Bill 10 was to just sprouse it up, clean it up, and make sure we have a complete document that we would have closed the door to constitution making possible for the next 20 years. Our friends disputed Bill 10. What did they do when they came back? Bill 7. Bill 7 did not respond to the aspirations of Zambian people. It actually responded to the aspirations of the ruling elites, and they have succeeded in doing it. Now you can imagine how audacious they are. They even want to do it within 2.5 years. They want to come back to the constitution. How can you justify that? And this is why we had told them the window for amending the constitution was not sufficient. So I entirely agree with Mr. Mavimba. Maybe, and this issue was raised back in 1973. As back as 1973, Zambians knew that politicians are a very dangerous species of individuals to be allowed to be toying with the constitution. Zambians had proposed to put a referendum clause in the constitution itself to say, don't amend this constitution, any part of the constitution, without a referendum. But because at that time politics was heightened and there were fights between Kaunda's camp and the camps that were not for amendment to the constitution in 1971, 72, 73, that thing was thrown under the carpet. And this thing has come haunting us because now politicians can amend the constitution at will. There are those who are, like we have demonstrated, who can have bad intentions to amend the constitution, and clearly the UPND has demonstrated those bad intentions, because Bill number 7, which is ordered in Act number 13, is just an exhibition of bad intentions. So I agree with Mr. Mavimba that maybe we should reflect and then put a clause in the constitution to make sure that any amendment to the constitution must be subject to a referendum where every stakeholder will participate. I can't repeat what Vanashtotela says, but this is a cry of a woman, okay, who knows that if you mismanage the country, people suffer. And the only solution to mismanagement of the country is change of government. Vachongo reflects exactly what Vanashtotela said. Just to reassure Vachongo, we intend to unite. We intend to put every political opposition leaders or political organizations into one crucible of a united opposition in the nation. But it's not only us as BMA who has a duty to do that. As we are pioneering it, we are speaking to everybody. You saw what we did. We persuaded a very firebrand young man who has presidential ambitions and who has massive following behind him. Honorable Bino Mpundu, we reasoned with him. We sat with him for not less than 3 weeks, talking to each other, finding out where are our common grounds, what can bring us together. We discovered what keeps us apart is far less than what brings us together. On the understanding that we've got a common agenda and we've got a common intention, and to basically liberate the Zambian people again, we agreed to bring each other under BM8. Now, this is a growing concept. This is an organism that can bring in everybody else. Our thinking is that even with SP, I can tell you that, because like I told you, I am the I'm the principal advisor to Brian Mundubile on BM8 project. Even and I can even disclose here that the one time when I was even trying to put up a meeting between our Fred member and Brian, I was saying, look, as leaders, you must be speaking to each other. Yes, you can be leading two different organizations, but if you are on the same side, which is the opposition, you must find it within yourselves to get to speak to each other. So even when Mr. Membe makes those remarks that we find unfortunate, for me, I haven't closed the door to reaching out to him. He's my elder brother. He's an elder statesman. He understands politics probably more than I understand them, but we can put ourselves together and come up with something that is credible. Even with Makebi, even when he makes this unfortunate remark about Bran, with whom they've been meeting and talking about how we push ourselves forward, our door is still open. I am the principal, person who reaches out to all these people. I can reach out, and I intend to reach out to them and speak on common language to make sure we bring the opposition together. All other NGOs that we're talking to, all other individuals who have got credibility in the country, we are speaking the same language. We want to push the country to a stage where it becomes a country that our forefathers fought for at independence, albeit an improved one where politics are supposed to deliver for the benefit of the people, not for the benefit of a selected few.
Your concluding remarks?
Our concluding remarks basically are that, look, Zambia is at a crossroads. And the crossroads we have is basically political leadership. I think there comes a time when people must abandon their quest to take positions that, yes, they're entitled to take, but that the environment currently does not allow them to take without any difficulty. It is very clear the BM8 movement has grown exponentially so. It is the only movement outside the political parties that can be heard of in Lundazi, can be heard of in Southern Province, can be heard of in Nalolo, can be heard of in Kawambo and in Mpulungu at the same time. This movement is because people have assimilated to whatever Edgar Lungu wanted when he noticed that the UPND government, in connivance, of course, with our colleagues within the political structure, I wouldn't want to mention names, but President Edgar Lungu had realized that what was happening to the PF was unfortunately working because some people within the PF had decided to create a a league with people outside to destroy that party. And using intelligence and speaking to people that are able to structure something like Zumani Zimba, they created the ECO movement that then came to lead the Tonse Alliance. This is what people are now responding to, because Edgar Lungu only became president because Michael Sata had pointed to him and said, this is the person who's going to be president. BM has become a president because Edgar Lungu had pointed to him as one of those that he thought he was going to contend. And he bidded us who were in parliament, saying, you've got a colleague in there who we are supporting. Those things that we are doing every Friday at parliament to speak to the nation, it was Edgar who designed it for us to give us visibility. It's because he knew that the parliament provided the best nursery from which a leader of the party and the movement is supposed to have come from. And this parliament has created a leader in BM8, the BM8 project. This is a project that is not pursuing personal interest, but is pursuing the interest of the Zambian people. There are those who may not have agreed with what transpired at the Tonse Alliance. But see, desperate measures sometimes demand desperate steps to be taken. We wanted to survive. We were sinking as a patriotic front boat. And quite frankly, we were sinking because those who were holding the pedals were not using the pedals. They were allowing this thing to sink because I don't know for what reasons, but clearly there seemed to have been connivance between some of those who were leading us and those who were in there who want to see the death of the patriotic front. So we have just resurrected ourselves through the Tonse Alliance, and where we are going, it is becoming very clear that we may have to choose another vessel to utilize. How I wish we could continue with the patriotic front. But you see, we must not be dead to the reality. The reality is that the UPND has an interest in making sure that PF does not participate as PF in the next election. In Kasama, believe it or not, I was dealing with people in areas who had come to the polling station looking for a bot. You know, twachirafu ayobwato, tuvunaba watu watu watutabulipo, na tumana patch paper wakile pale. Those things you exhibit outside the polling stations, there's no bot. And the only thing they understood up to that time was a bot. And they walked away. Why? Because we've never had time to go and explain to them that given the challenges that we are facing, we are making these changes. This time is getting little and little every day. We need to make sure that we take steps that will make us exist as a political organization, at least until the next election comes through. I am very confident myself that with the work that we're putting in place with all the stakeholders in BM8 movement and the Tonse Alliance, we are going to form a mother of all opposition. And everybody, including those who are speaking negatively against Mundubile, will come to the fore because reality will set in and we'll talk to each other as brothers. You know, Martin Luther King once made a statement. It's a startling statement. He says, see, when we are faced with the problem like what faced America at that time, which unfortunately is facing Zambia this time, you have two options. Either you reason together as brothers and sisters and succeed, or you fail to reason and perish as idiots. You know, the options that are facing us are so big. It is very clear that we are living in a divided country. Talk about the rule of law. Talk about elections. Talk about the economy. Talk about farming. Talk about mining. We are not speaking the same language as our friends who are in government. We are speaking for the people. They are speaking for themselves. We are speaking for the people. They are speaking for investors. You know, we are speaking for the people. They are speaking for political elites. So there's a marked difference between the guys who are in government right now and us who are on the outside. The people on the outside have glued themselves to the BM8 movement because it's the only hope that can bring us change. And like Vachongoa said, we would like to engage with everybody, including our elder brother, Mr. Given Lubinda. We don't hate him. We actually love him so much. For me, you know, I can tell you the truth. I've worked with Mr. Lubinda throughout the time that PF has been in opposition, close range. I have been his chief legal advisor. You see, but when he dispenses with the advice that you gave him, what do? As a lawyer, you sit back and say, fine, I advise, and he didn't take my advice. But now time has come when we can put behind all our differences, sit together, talk to each other, find what brings us together, and push the agenda forward for the benefit of the Zambian people. If we lose an opportunity in 2026, we may well not get it in 2031. It may become more difficult. What with this story that you are hearing, that they even want to come and amend the constitution, what is in store for us? If you look at the journey under Bill number 7, you know, it's the same painful journey that they're going to subject Zambians to create a political elite that leads and everybody follows. It's like now it will be a case of a shepherd and the sheep. All of us will just become sheep. The UPND are going to become shepherd. They will be telling us what to do, will not be cautioning. I would rather we maintain our democratic tenets where people can tell you, you know, what must happen. I was in Kenya in 2002. And President Mwai Kibaki said to the listening of everybody when he became president, I am going to run a government that is afraid of the opinion of the people, because we're going to be doing only what the people tell us, unless what the people tell us is unreasonable. And usually what the people outside the political mainstay tell you is reasonable. And we need to get back to a government of people that listen, not to a government that dictates on people. The options are available. We can talk to each other, but at the end of the day, the choice is for the opposition political parties. Unity is not an option. We must take it up so that we can give Zambians the leadership that they deserve. Thank you very, very much for the opportunity, Jack.
Thank you very much, Honorable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament, Lukashya constituency was